Hey Greg,
Hey,
thank you for joining us.
no worries. Thank you very much for having me.
It's nice to be recording one of our calls as
Yes.
opposed to just having a normal meeting. Um, why don't you explain to people what you do at Griffin, maybe a little bit about your background as well, and how did you get here?
Sure thing. So my role at Griffin is the client solutions lead. Essentially, what that means is that I sit in the commercial function, and I really sit between kind of the end customer and then our product, our engineering, and our treasury teams. And we, in the client solutions function, are essentially trying to build the most effective and efficient solution for customers. Um, and that can kind of take a couple of days, really getting into things like workshops with people, really trying to understand the inner workings of their systems and how they can properly build on Griffin. So that's kind of what I do. In terms of my background, I have done a lot of different stuff. I did a year at PwC in their sales and marketing function, which was very different than kind of your standard accounting role there. Um, I then joined a debt fund, so I focused on investing into fintechs. A lot of it was around the mandate of the fund was sort of lending to lenders. So we would provide capital to innovative lenders in different kind of asset classes. So anything from car finance, student loans, credit cards. So got to see a lot of cool different things there, especially when we got to do things in music, like music royalties, music rights. That was very interesting. And then also in the wine and spirit world, kind of providing working capital for those sorts of companies was super interesting, especially when you get to do the wine tours. So I did that for 3.5 years. Um, I kind of was a bit like really interested and loved talking to a lot of the early stage startups that we worked with. I kind of wanted to sort of feel what it would be like on the other side of the table. And I took a bit of a left turn and I went and started working at a pet food company, um, doing insect based dog and cat food, which again, it was very, very different to kind of what I was doing, but found it super interesting. And that led me to, excuse me, that led me to co-founding the world's first personalized dog supplement business, which again was kind of building a product from sort of zero to one was just fascinating, especially when you're trying to do something that nobody else has done before, and there was a lot of different things that went really well, a lot of things that went wrong, and just building, I think anything from zero to one is super interesting. Um, so I did that for about a year and a half, and then I found myself at Griffin, um, which is, a kind of a really good combination of everything I think I've done. Kind of, it's
Yeah,
got the finance, it's got the fintech stuff, but we're building something that nobody's really done before,
yeah,
and it's super interesting to kind of combine everything.
yeah. That's a very interesting career journey from Big Four to co-founder of a very cool pet food company, and then yeah, onto Griffin as well. I have a lot of questions, but why don't maybe like you say, thinking back through your career, like what are some of the key things that you've brought to the role at Griffin, like from maybe as like a in your startup journey, are there certain things that you've picked up along the way that have really you think helped you so far?
Yeah, I think I guess kind of one of the things that I've always, and it's definitely where I found myself kind of having or enjoying the most throughout my career is sort of that the concept of sort of building, and sort of starting from scratch. If I take kind of going back to the debt fund when I worked there and we were investing in a music royalties business, they'd never done this sort of thing before and neither had we. And that was kind of we had the principles of how we could of how we invested money and how we deployed our capital. Um, but then it's kind of music royalties work very differently to a car finance business. So there was kind of the how do we build something here that scales, which was super interesting. And again, kind of then like doing the, co-founding a pet supplement business, which is just was nothing that I'd ever imagined I would do. But again, I think that the most interesting part of it was kind of, really trying to solve the problems and build. The and I kind of think that then leads me into what I'm doing now, and sort of like, I talk to businesses a lot, and we talk to, kind of really, really big companies, and we talk to like lots of startups, and sort of like trying to help them position and build the product they want to offer. Um, and I think that's what I seem to be doing a lot throughout what I've been doing, and that's kind of the theme, is sort of trying to get in underneath the hood a little bit and find out what's really going on and how we can kind of build a very sustainable, scalable, and sort of efficient, whether it's a process. I mean, if I take like the dog supplement business, for example, the stuff that we built was very weird. We built like an algorithm that had, I think it was over about 6 billion combinations of supplements that you could have. So every kind of supplement was unique. But then actually trying to build that and actually manufacture them is very difficult. And it's kind of the ins and outs of that that was really fun. And same here at Griffin, right? Trying to build efficient solutions for people is super interesting.
It's a really good point. Why don't we paint the picture for people? Like, what is a solution in the banking space, in our banking space in particular? Like, what does it look like at a very kind of high level?
Yeah, so kind of like a very high level, it is normally lots of squares and lots of arrows on a page, and kind of we're talking about different accounts and different flows of money. Really, it's sort of like, what account structure can we create, using Griffin's platform and what you've got existing to sort of make things run efficiently and compliantly as well, which is obviously super important. And the way it normally works is kind of, we will package up sort of, if we're embedding into an existing solution, we'll kind of add in how it works for us, and sort of, whose accounts who are we opening accounts for, who are the beneficiary of those accounts, and then we'll just sort of the process of like how money flows. And that's kind of where we're at. That's
Yeah,
what a normal solution looks like. So when it gets presented, it's normally kind of just a flow of funds. So
yeah.
there's some squares. The squares are labeled. There's some arrows. They're labeled.
Yeah, it
Who's
is.
who's at what point?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. For me personally, when without having a finance background, uh, it was amazing to see the possible variation in solutions using the same building blocks. Like, um, it's just amazing how, like, I sometimes use the analogy that like money is like water. It can kind of go anywhere, or if it goes wrong, it can leak somewhere. But it is amazing
Yeah,
how you can kind of like put that plumbing into place with a solution, and it can be dramatically different to another solution.
yeah, 100%. And I think one of the things about the solution is it's also, we always need to think about how it works for the end customer and where they're trying to find the value, because some people are looking to kind of make things super efficient on their end, where it's an account that they can just program and money sort of hits an account and then splits out to 10 other accounts. um, some people are trying to create 10 accounts for a really easy sort of solution to efficiently reconcile where funds are flowing in and where they're flowing out of again. um, and you're totally right. It's sort of, there's so many different things that we can do, and it's one of the really fun things. It's also one of the hard things. Is kind of, we can tell and explain how a solution could work, but really we need to kind of almost lead the people that we work with to kind of get to make sure that they're designing a solution that works best for them. Pretty much normally we can always do that. It's just making sure that it works for everybody.
Yeah. Where do you start in that process? Is it with the objective, or is it somewhere else? Like when you first come to design a solution with a customer.
Yeah, normally we would look at it, and I think kind of we sort of the said sort of like listening to what they've got, trying to get underneath the hood a little bit of, if they've got existing providers, how does it work? If they don't, normally it's kind of like a clean slate, and we can we can go with however we want. But a lot of it is like understanding what they've got now and understanding how they're going to create a lot of value and where they see that value from working with Griffin. And then that's the solution that we try and build towards. And it's almost like okay, this is what we want. We want to be able to easily reconcile funds that kind of land in these accounts. And it's okay, well, then we can create these accounts. How do we do that? And then we work backwards from there. Basically, it's normally the approach.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think one of the things is when you really get under the hood, it's when you find other things as well. So things that you didn't realize, or like, oh, okay, well, there's a fee in here that belongs to this person over here. Should it be in this account? Should it be swept out before? Does that mean we need another account over here? Do these people have the regulatory status to do that? You know, and the authorizations and whatnot. So yeah, there's a lot of different things, but it's kind of it's a very iterative process.
Yeah.
And we in a lot of senses we do talk about kind of like standard and standardized stuff, but I think one of the things that since I've been at Griffin, I think we'd love the idea of standard.
Yeah.
But I think it does I think it's really hard because everybody has their own ways of doing things and the way they've built things. And yeah, we've not found, I'd say, a standard.
Well, like you say, everyone's got a different setup, or they're coming to the table with a different existing solution, and then regulatory statuses are different, objectives are different. There's a lot of variables that go into
100%.
it. And, yeah, but that's the fun of it as well, I guess, and optimizing for the best outcome for the customer and the end customer.
Yeah, exactly. And I think kind of one of the fun things as well is it's like and one of the great things about working at Griffin and the way that our platform is designed is that we can kind of design something now, and then if something changes on the customer's end, say, you know, they get their authorization and they become an EMI, we are sufficiently kind of nimble enough and agile enough, and our CISO is our system, that we can kind of shift from one solution to another. And it's always fun designing both at the same time.
That's a really good point, though. Yeah, and that flexibility is super important. Why don't we focus on a sector that you've done a lot of work in recently, which is kind of FX and remittance space. What are some of the common pain points that you're seeing in that sector, and how do you go about solving for them as well?
Yeah, I think so. Super interesting sector, which has grown tremendously, and I think one of the things, and this is almost across the board, right? And it's especially in FX and remittance, but what we see a lot of is a company has kind of nailed their core offering. You know, if that is remittance, then, you know, a lot of the time they've nailed it. We've also seen this in kind of other spaces, sort of like lending. We've seen it in, there's, you know, other people in sort of like pensions as well. And the core thing that they've done is that they've nailed that core idea, and that product, it works. And what they've done is they've spent normally a decent amount of money to acquire a decent amount of customers. And what they want to try and do, and what I think what we're seeing a lot of, is that people want to keep their customers engaged and on their platform and using their platform even once their initial product is kind of finished. So as an example would be like, as a remittance firm, I have sent money somewhere else. The journey was great for the customer, but it's done. The money's been sent, and it's sort of like, how do we keep them actively engaged? We might have just spent, you know, £100 on customer acquisition costs to get them, but how do we now kind of like extend that lifetime value and really keep them going? And it's the same in all the other kind of, and a lot of other industries that we're seeing. And one of the ways that they are looking at this is like, well, how can they make the journey kind of longer? So can they start depositing funds that they're about to remit? Can they kind of create a savings account? They know they need to send £1,000 somewhere else. Can they save that £1,000 on their platform? Once they're done, you know, can they carry on, like, work towards the next one, whether it's a savings account or whether it's a different sort of embedded bank account? A lot of it is about like, how do they keep customers engaged and funds sort of on their platform for as long as possible? And that's one of the things that we have been exploring, and how we can help people. There's a lot of people that are looking at, they've really, as I said, if they've nailed their customer acquisition, they've nailed their core product offering, they're now just looking to sort of just build on that. And if money's involved, it's sort of how do they keep it on platform for longer?
That's such a good point. That a lot of these, say especially in the FX space, I guess a lot of the transactions are kind of one and done, or like done for, I don't know, a month or a week or whatever the gap is. But yeah, that company who's facilitating that really good journey has spent a lot of money and
Yeah,
time to get the customers
yeah,
there. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense that, as you say, it's the classic kind of LTV to CAC ratio.
yeah,
How do we
exactly.
increase
And
that?
and like a lot of these companies as well, like their customer base is super loyal,
Right.
and they really enjoy the experience. It's really efficient. And I think if they could offer more, then the customers would take it. And I think the difficulty is just kind of finding what that next thing is, that also like kind of fits in with what they actually do as a business as well, right?
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Are there any kind of risk and compliance elements that are particularly relevant in the kind of remittance and FX space that cause challenges? Because I imagine it's a slightly riskier sector than some others. I guess it depends what you're comparing to.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think there's obviously a lot of kind of like risk and compliance work that needs to go into any sort of remittance or business, specifically remittance. Whether it's sort of where the end kind of recipient is, what location that is. We as a and most firms as well, they'll have their own risk appetites where they believe they should or shouldn't be sending cash to protect themselves and to protect their own customers. Um, and it's kind of making sure that everybody's on the same page and that everybody's doing the right thing. And it's one of the things that you kind of really dig into on any sort of like, if we were working with a remittance company, you really kind of dig into and sort of like look at their policies. How do they manage their own risk? How does it work? And there's a lot to kind of to be like really tuned in on, and it's very complicated, often, and which is why we've got a lot of very intelligent people in our compliance teams here that we can lean on. And yeah, the fraud risk and sort of things. It's also one of the things that it's not just kind of about sending money to the wrong people. It's making sure that the money that's being sent, the people that can afford to send it, or they're not vulnerable customers. They're not being forced into doing something, and it's kind of putting systems and controls in place that kind of can really talk to all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Again, comes back to the number of variables,
Yeah,
things to think about.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a lot of companies out there doing this as well, and we can talk to some that have kind of really thought about everything, and then there's others that they're kind of just their attitude towards risks is a little bit more lax, and it's kind of finding the sweet spot between that everybody, right?
yeah, for sure, for sure. You've worked on a lot of these solutions, Greg, in a lot of sectors. Is there maybe like one particular solution or prospect or customer, whatever you want to call it, that you've worked on that you found like really, really fun or really hard? Has there been one that really stands out to you?
So there's definitely one that stands out. There's two that I think really stand out. I think one of them was kind of it was is a sort of a prospect customer that we've been talking to, and kind of leans into what we were talking about earlier about people in these people that have found their secret sauce and have really nailed what they do, and it's how they can kind of keep their customers engaged for longer. And the specific solution was about sort of how we can essentially or whether we could embed savings accounts into products to keep their, essentially, like, say, if it's a big purchase, take sort of like the holiday industry, for example. If it was a big purchase, which it is, can you buy a holiday for somebody, and then as soon as you get back, there's a savings account with a very competitive rate on there waiting for you to start saving for your next one. Thinking about how that works, and sort of the solution part of that was not like super difficult. It's very easy to embed that. It's just kind of the almost the thinking around why customers would want to do this, or how they do this as well, and sort of what that looks like, is really interesting. So that's definitely one, is kind of in industries that you wouldn't specifically think about, but it keeps people engaged with a specific brand and business. So that's one solution. I think the second solution, which is fascinating, and I think has been brought up on the podcast before, which is Yonder, which I think so Yonder's an interesting one. I worked on their first debt deal when I was back at the debt fund.
Small world.
Very small world. A very small world, but a really fantastic team doing some really cool stuff. So as soon as I saw their name pop up within Griffin, I was like, I know what these guys do. And then, did get back into their flow of funds, and did remember the kind of confusing kind of lots of arrows, lots of squares on that one, and lots of different parties involved, but fascinating nevertheless. And sort of getting into that, I think, and how they can use the Griffin infrastructure to sort of help with their operations, and sort of offer something to their customers was super cool. So getting into that solution, and sort of now, if you're a Yonder customer, you'll probably have seen the Griffin logo as you've gone through kind of the journey, but every Yonder customer having a Griffin account, I think is super cool.
It's very cool that even just you explaining these two different solutions, how the same building blocks can create such vastly different outcomes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's super fun and interesting is kind of the way that I have typically spoken about the Griffin products normally like slots into 3 pillars. But it's interesting how many different use cases are in each, and sort of whether you're kind of in the regulated space with client money accounts, whether you need a pooled or dedicated, the different industries that we can serve with those accounts is so vast, and everyone's going to be in, all of them are very different. It's the same when we get into kind of like an embedded bank account offering. The use cases for embedded bank accounts are relatively limitless. So it's super interesting, especially when you kind of put it into product terms.
Yeah. What would be? I think I might know the answer because I know you, but not everyone knows you as well as I do. We work together day to day with you. But what's one industry, if you could have, if you were to design a solution today for one industry, what would it be? What would be a real challenge you'd love to get stuck into?
I definitely think, just given my my background in kind of the debt world, anything to do with credit, I think kind of getting into how we can build solutions so efficiently for non-bank lenders. We can do it for like normal banks as well, but they're just a little bit not as open to as getting their teeth into a platform. But yeah, building kind of solutions for the lending world, I think, is super compelling. I think there's use cases for the operational teams within the lender themselves. There's also then use cases for kind of how they can help the customer. If you take the Yonder example, kind of answers both at the same time, which is why it's so fun and interesting. It kind of helps their operations, but then it's also kind of you're solving a problem for the customer at the end. And I think kind of building solutions in that space is really I was going to say fun. I don't know whether lots and lots of people would refer to it as fun, but it's it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of already started doing that as well with Habu. You helped them. We can mention them publicly. Yeah, you helped
Yeah,
them design a solution to work for their repayment system. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Like I think what Habu's doing is super cool, kind of helping to make repayment of debt easier for people. The classic use case is that most lenders are so inflexible with their ability to actually um, the way that they can receive repayments. I
yeah,
mean, most people know, like if you can struggle to just sort of like say, oh, I've got a bit of extra cash this month, I'm going to go and repay £100 more extra off my loan. It's not that easy with a lot of lenders. And I think what Habu's solution is doing and kind of allowing people like proactively pulling money from accounts when it's right time for the customer is super interesting. And their use case again kind of uses the Griffin infrastructure, but can embed into some pretty big financial organizations that just do not have the kind of sophistication or systems in place to kind of add that it's not even really complex. It's just add the ability to for people to pay slightly differently than their loan management systems will cope with.
yeah. That's a good point. That's a very good point. I have to be honest, Greg, I thought you were going to say wine or pet food when I asked you about the industry, but it just goes
Yeah,
to show, don't judge too soon.
yeah. I mean, the wine. I'm as soon as we get into the wine industry, I will be at the forefront for Griffin. I
That'll
would,
be a fun one.
yeah,
Yeah.
jump back into that. It's a crazy, interesting industry as well.
Yeah,
Doing really
yeah.
well. Yeah, I've seen lots of stuff about that kind of democratizing wine investment,
Right,
which
right.
is
Yeah.
which is
Wine
fun.
as an asset class.
Exactly, wine as an asset class. Same
Yeah.
as this. I mean, same as music as an asset class.
Right, right.
You
Yeah,
can
yeah.
own a couple of or own partial bits of a song of your favorite artist would be quite fun.
That's cool.
Uh,
That's very cool.
Same as wine. I like wine. I just don't know enough about it, unfortunately, to actually know what bottle I would buy.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, Greg, what's been a highlight for you at Griffin? You've been here over a year now, approaching 18 months. Like, what's one or a couple of things that really stood out for you?
I think there's an incredible amount of very intelligent people here, and I think one of the things that and it comes out in the way that we work with customers, but kind of the openness and the transparency that we have. You know, if you take like our free to use sandbox, our public documentation, that kind of is not just a thing that's externally facing and like something that we live with, and the way that we work internally. I think everybody can put forward ideas and be very honest and open about the way that we could build something or the way that we're doing something, and people listen. And I think that's the best thing for me, kind of like that openness, transparency, and honesty throughout kind of the business internally. It flows through to externally as well. But that's definitely the highlight for me. I think kind of it's really easy being able to work with customers and they say like, oh, but what does your technology kind of how does it work and how does it look? And yeah, not being a tech guy, it's very nice to just be able to go, this is a link, you can go and do what you need. Yeah,
I'm always
that
amazed at how surprising it is for people to receive that sandbox link. And it's like, yeah, it genuinely is free, and there
yeah,
genuinely is no need to sign an NDA.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, but I do get you. Yeah, awesome, Greg. I mean, I've got the pleasure of working with you day to day. It's nice to be a bit self-indulgent and be able to do this, have a little bit more of a Q&A and like a chat.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's been really nice to have you on. We'd love to talk more about what you're going to do in the next few months later. If you
yeah,
want to come back at any point, talk us through another solution or yeah, pricing.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And if we want to talk through pet supplement solutions,
Yes.
or how much omega-3 you need for a big Labrador with joint problems, just let me know. We can get into that as well.
Yeah, or if you want to know what bottle of wine Greg invests in over the next few months, come back soon.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, exactly. Like, follow, share, whatever the stuff is we have to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg. Absolute
Cool.
pleasure.
Thanks, man. Cheers.